And we are live. Oh. Good morning, good morning, good morning, one and all, and a surprise, good morning walk. Well, it's a good morning walk just on Sunday rather than Saturday today. But yes, as usual, good Yorkshire weather as always. Well, it's slightly cold, but at least the sun is out, keeping us at least a nice semi-decent temperature. Always good, always good. But yes, welcome, one and all to the good morning walk on a Sunday this time. Like I say, unfortunately we couldn't have one yesterday. I just so happened to be in Hull on Saturday. Well, on Friday, should we say. Oh, good morning to you. I think that was Cathal OG, I think it was. Could you see there just? Yep, Cathal, yep, I thought so. Good morning. Ooh, but yes, good morning to you all. Yes, like I said, I was all. And I went to see a show. Ben, good morning, Yorkshire. Good morning to you. But yes, I went to see a show in Hull. I went to see Six, which is, pardon me, which is sort of a more, well, what's the best way to describe it? It's like a modern take. It's a musical of a modern take on like the wives of Henry VIII. So it was quite good. I definitely recommend it. The music's good. It's a good show. I think the way that it's done and the way that it's like put forward as like all the six wives have sort of like, banded together and formed like a more like modern day sort of girl group. It's quite good. It's quite a good idea. History wise, again, from someone who sort of knows their history, there were some interesting conundrums. Again, knowing how sort of knowing that history in the way that I do. Anne of Cleves is a fantastic example because they sort of set her up as, she got divorced. She got this. She didn't get given a house. She bought her own house because she was very independently wealthy. But the whole reason why, she didn't move back to like Germany or anything like that was the fact that she was convinced that Henry was going to remarry her after the fall of Catherine Parr. That's just the history of it, unfortunately. But for someone like me who's sort of into history, don't want to get me wrong, really good show. If you get a chance to go and see it, definitely go see it. Six gets 5 out of 5 stars because although I could have given it 6 out of 6 stars, I suppose. Keep it with the theme. But yes, very good show. Definitely recommend going and see it. Morning, just me. We get another Saturday. Well, it's a good morning walk on a Sunday this time. Thought you were going to watch a good Saturday morning walk and repeat. No, we're just having our good morning walk today rather than yesterday. Again, like I say, I was in Hull. I went to see a show. Other than that, yes. It's been pretty good, to be honest. Yeah, definitely recommend it. Go and see it if you can. Nothing better than a trek on the day of rest. Indeed. Well, to be honest, when you've got, you know, lovely scenery like this, you can't really complain. Gotta put it to some good use. But yes, so Rishi Sunak, Rishi, something. Good morning. Who is Sunak as a hopeful for moving out of number 11 next week? Yeah. Yeah, I like I say, I did a video about this yesterday. If you've seen it, so sorry if you've seen the video and we recover some of those points, but I think they're worth very much going over, to be honest, especially in the light of the fact that this morning Rishi Sunak has actually asked the civil servants to find out who leaked the information, especially not only his wife's non-dom status, but also the green card one as well, because his allies, because as we've said before, if you were going to put a bet on who's likely to be the next prime minister, there's some long shots, don't get me wrong, but the top two candidates were Liz and Rishi, and Liz has had a fall from grace, so she's no longer guaranteed. And of course, now with all this, with like the week that he's had, not doing anything about the cost of living crisis, being unable to, buy a can of Coke, jetting off to, I can't remember where he jetted off to, right in the middle of this crisis where he really should have been here trying to do something, not only about the cost of living crisis, but again, the energy crisis that we're facing, that's going to, again, affect hundreds of thousands of people. It seems to me, without a doubt, someone is out to get him. Someone is out to get Rishi Sunak. And the fact that this information, his wife's non-dom status, was only known by a very, very few select amount of people. So this had to have been an inside leak from someone. And I don't think it was like a disgruntled civil servant. I think this was definitely we need to get rid of Rishi, or we need to do some, we need to dish the dirt, shall we say, on Rishi, because now was just, well, given the week that he's just had, and again, the timing of not only the non-dom stuff, but also the green card stuff as well, it's all very, very it's come out very quickly, very sudden. Yeah. Can of Coke confused the Chancellor. Yeah, very true. Good morning, all. Good morning. Brilliant hatchet job on Sunak. Who's next? Liz Truss. Liz Truss has already taken her own damage, and I think this has been very much to put Sunak out of the running as well, because Sunak isn't, you know, the most popular of people in the Tory party. Like I say, he's got his own grouping. But this is what happens, and I've said before, you know, if Boris Johnson goes, there's going to be a Tory civil war. But I think when we look back, like maybe in a, you know, who knows, a couple of months, maybe in a couple of years' time, maybe we'll think back and think, well, there was really a, shall we say, a secret war going on behind the scenes to get themselves ready, shall we say, to take power. And I think that's possibly the game that's really being played. You know, he has an absolutely, you know, awful week, and then the non-dom stuff comes out, his green card stuff comes out, and it's like, hold on a second, what's going on here? Now, I'm also really glad that non-dom status is once again, well, not it's not come up again, it's really come up for the first time in the newspaper, and people are finding out about, you know, what a non-dom is. And just for those of you who sort of don't know, essentially it's a special tax status that you can acquire, so you don't have to pay essentially UK tax, and essentially, you know, it costs money. It costs about, you know, 30,000 a year, but to the people who are using the non-dom status, 30,000 a year is nothing to them. It's chump change. And really, when you look at how much, you know, money and property and wealth they own, they'd be paying far, far more in taxes than just 30,000. So I'm really glad that this issue has actually been brought up. And I really, really hope, you know, this issue comes up and that we can actually get rid of this, because once again, it's a fantastic way to really stick it to the Tories, because most of the people in the, you know, in the Tory party, like I think it was found out this morning, who was it now? Because there was someone else who came out recently and said, "Oh, I was a non-dom before I became an MP," and you're like, Oh, who was it now? Bald-headed guy. Oh, I can't remember his name. Not Sajid. Yes, Sajid Javid. when I can say his name, that's it. So he came out as a, you know, as this. So it's very, very, you know, sort of interesting. Oh, let's read some of your comments. Hang on a second. Oh, is that true, Bo? So Bo just said Savage Javid allegedly also held non-dom status for 6 years while holding office. Jay, Saturday night for you. Hello for you. For those in the different time zone, good evening to you. Is it Friday or Saturday? Hi to you. Tugnet might be the next MP. I think they'll probably go for Ben Wallace. Previous Tory civil war led to Brexit. That's very true. Only Nadine Dorris can fix the economy. Sarcasm alert. Very true. Very, very true. Daily Mail. Again, if that's true, Houghton here. Daily Mail, I know, reporting that Sunak has left number 11. I think a briefing war is on the cards. I think it is. I think that's what we're seeing. We're seeing, someone's out to get Rishi. There's no other way you can put this, and the question is, who's done it? who did it? It's like Clue. It was Nadine Dorris in the study with the mobile phone type thing, because that's where we're headed. I think it's going to be very interesting to try and work that out, because I think he's and it's very difficult for us to work out who it might have been, because there's obviously a leaker. Morning. So there's obviously a leaker somewhere. We've seen we've seen this before, obviously with Cummings, but could Cummings have been the leaker? He might have been, for all we know. He might have been sitting on this stuff for a while. So actually, tell you what, let's make a suspect list. Let's put on our detective hats. Let's come up with a suspect list. So, prime suspect, I'm saying this now, is Dominic Cummings. I thought it was his family moving out. It's got to be Johnson. Boris Johnson, Russian associations possible. Yeah, Cummings was my first thought. Yeah, it's Cummings really is the prime suspect in this. Like I say, he's done it before. And obviously, remember when he got the boot. He did say he had lots of stuff to dish the dirt on, but he was going to wait for it. So really, prime candidate has to be Cummings at number one. He's got the motive, and he's had access to the material. He's got motive and he's got cause. So Cummings is definitely top of the list. Now your next one, some people have said it in the chat, but it could very well be Boris Johnson. Make no mistake, prime ministers have always been worried about the man in number 11. Because if there's, like I say, normally like the Chancellor and the PM, the Chancellor is normally like the second guy in line behind this. And you're like, well, could Boris Johnson have used all this, bad publicity that he's, that Rishi has been getting this week to go, I'm just going to leak this little tidbit to the press. And then I'm also going to drop his green card stuff as well. So Boris Johnson taking out his own Chancellor, as, again, we saw obviously the rise of Sunak's popularity, obviously during the pandemic. And of course, Boris, should we say, likes to be the one in the limelight. It also helps that Boris is potentially having his own troubles as well. So, again, Boris has got the motive. And it's not like Boris hasn't done this before, so he's got priors. it was Boris who sabotaged, um, other people's chances back in, what was it, 2016, at that time of the leadership contest. So he's has to be like suspect number 2. He definitely has to be suspect number 2. There's the motive and the means for him to do it. So he definitely has to be our suspect number 2 on this list. Johnson will do anything to cling on to power. Yes, very true. Like I say, when you've got a threat of a chancellor like that, it's very, very tempting to obviously try and get rid of him. What's this? Cummings doesn't gain from this, Bojo does, ergo Boris did it. Possibly, Mark. Possibly. But Cummings bringing down the government, or at least key members of Boris's cabinet, he does sort of gain from it as well. He can gain from that potentially as well. So, like I say, I wouldn't rule out Cummings as being the prime suspect, because I very much think he is, suspect number 1 in all this. Can you imagine if he sacks the Chancellor? Ben, what about Williamson? Wasn't he the chief whip? He knows where all the skeletons are buried. That's a good point, Ben, actually. That's probably a very good point. He might be. Ben Wallace could be a... oh, not Ben Wallace. Is it Ben Wallace? It could be. But then again, the chief whip is seen someone who is like the most loyal in the party. You wouldn't give the chief whip a position to someone you didn't trust. Jay, that's what I'd think. Cummings seems like the sort of scorched earth type of guy. Yeah. Who would replace Rishi? I don't know, Chthonic. I really don't know. You might get someone shuffled in from around the cabinet. Maybe Zawahe could be shuffled in. He does seem like the type of guy who wants that type of job, so that could be it. Johnson's favourite record, looking after number 1, the Boomtown Rats. Very true, Chris. Very true. Pretty Bird, Cummings might have a load of vendetta and spite to hand out. Very good, yeah. Andrew, this could implode the Tories. Cummings number 1 suspect. He wants to destroy the party now. Yeah, he does. Cummings has openly said that before, so that's very, very true, Andrew. Yes, Kutang. Yes, Kersey Kutang could be Grayling. Crowburn guessed Chris Grayling. It was all a ruse all along. All those moments of like gross failure and incompetence. It was all just a ruse. It's all a clever ruse. Little did we know the genius at work behind failing Grayling. Fabricant question mark. Maybe Russell Brand will sweep in to become the Chancellor. Oh no, please no. No, not Russell Brand. So yeah, who would be the next suspect? Because if you think going down our list, I think Cummings is the prime suspect. Absolutely. Cummings is the prime suspect. If you have a green card, doesn't that make you American citizen? Yes, it does. So our chancellor, apparently, for his first year in the job, was an American citizen, which raises a lot of conflict of interest questions over there. Bakura. I don't know if you heard it from you, but did you hear about the Lords remove the voter ID from the election bill? Yes. I'll be going to be talking about that later, actually, because there's a couple of other things that were brought up in the Lords, which quite interesting, but I'm going to save that for later. Green card is one of the ways to become a US citizen. It's not a citizenship. Okay, right. I didn't know that. Like I say, I'm not. It's not something information I would know. But thanks for the info about that. So, but again, even then, if you've got that type of card, that has to raise an absolute ton of conflict of interest questions over that. And I wouldn't I wouldn't be surprised to see this week if you see other Conservatives outed for having non-dom statuses. So expect to see that this week as well. Could be the Russian bots wanting money back for their sanctions forced on by the Tories. Not a bad cop. We'll put them in a potential pool later on. That certainly. Well, Joe Morrissey was the first Republican MP in the House of Commons. Very true. A green card doesn't make you a US citizen, however, is part of the process. Becoming citizens is allow you to work or live in the US. For a green card, you have to be planning on becoming a Yank. Green card means he has to have a job in the US. Again, it wouldn't surprise me if he does have a consultancy job. It's like indefinite right to remain for the UK. Green card holders not meant to work for foreign governments, apparently. Green card also means you must file and pay US taxes, no matter where you live in the world. But given their wealth, don't you think they'd be bothered? Probably get a refund. Probably true. Oh, hello, RG. Yorkshireman in North California. Hello to you. Machiavellian, the Machiavellian way, ensure there are no competitors. Very true, because that brings us, of course, onto suspect number 3. And for those of you joining us, we're just going through a little suspect list. Who is out to get Rishi Sunak? We've just gone over our prime suspect, Dominic Cummings, and of course, he has the means and the motive. He wants to destroy and bring down the Conservative government. He definitely has an axe to grind. Of course, that brings us on to suspect number 2, Boris Johnson. Does Boris want to take down his own chancellor? It's very, very likely he could want to do that after the week that Rishi has had with all the bad news coverage. It could be very, very likely that Boris did this himself to essentially get rid of him. So it is entirely possible. It is entirely possible that could have happened. He'd done this just to get rid of his own chancellor. So we've got to watch out for that. Now, this brings us onto shall we say, suspects. Potential number 3. In fact, no, we're going to go suspect. Because, as someone just said, I think it was FSM said it, the Machiavellian way, ensure that there are no competitors. Well, as we've said before, Liz and Rishi were the 2 top contenders for the job. So could suspect number 3 be one of those people who would be in the running for potentially the next leader of the Conservative Party, potentially the next Prime Minister? It's Boris Johnson. There's no other suspects. I don't think there is. I think this is actually quite a wide field where you have it, really. So is suspect number three Steve Baker? We'll be getting to him in a bit. Could suspect number three be Liz Truss? After all, Truss has very recently had her own problems that have, shall we say, brought her down in the future leadership rankings. Could she now be doing the same thing to try and level the playing field? Again, there's your motive. Does she have the means to do it? Well, absolutely. She's in the cabinet. She would have absolutely had access to that material. And as Foreign Secretary, she'd absolutely know who and what were in who and what other people were in there. Who she would know who the non-doms were. After all, she's Foreign Secretary. She'd know that. She'd have access to that information. So, is she the leaker? Because she'd know. She'd almost certainly know that Sunak would have had a green card. She almost certainly would have known. And like I say, given the fact that Rishi has had a very tough week and a lot of, almost every day, bad press, it's certainly very, very interesting. Certainly very, very interesting that, shall we say, her main competitor just happens to get taken out of the race, potentially leaving the field open for her. Again. And then once again, you've got your means, you've got your motive. It's Chatty Rat the sequel. So there's your third suspect. Have you seen the HBO banger Brexit starring Cummings? Yes, I have seen it. I have seen it before. Would Patel have a role to play? Unsure. I don't know if Patel would be on the is on the suspect list, because again, it's no doubt, of course, that she's got our ambitions herself to be PM, but to be honest, the way and the reaction and just the absolute catastrophe not only has been trying to get her nationality and borders bill through, the crime and policing bill through, every bill she's tried to get through has absolutely failed. She isn't proving to be a very good Home Officer. Her immigration scheme has failed. We don't know. Oh, what's that? Mark R. Rishi started the ball rolling, announcing his disaster of a midi budget. Guess what was waiting for him to kick him when he was down? Exactly, that's what I think it was very much. So, I don't think it would be Patel. Now, I think Patel would almost certainly put a hat in the ring when there is a contest, but I don't think she would win. She would not stand a single chance. She has very few backers at the moment. Her record, of course, as Home Secretary isn't very good, to say the least. I don't think we can put her on the list. I just don't think she can be on the list. Not to say that unless, shall we say, something happens further down the line, at the moment we've got no reason to suspect her. So again, let's go through the our suspects again. So prime suspect number 1, Dominic Cummings. Number 2, Boris Johnson. Number 3, Liz Truss. So who's going to be number 4? You might also be underestimating Tory racism. No way they're going to make the token brown people a prime minister ever. Well, I wouldn't be so sure. I think that Rishi Sunak would have absolutely had a really good chance at becoming prime minister. I think he really would have. Oh, at this point as well. Whoop, there we go. At this point as well. Please do remember to hit that like and share buttons. Like I say, let everyone else know and get them in. Like I say, the more people we have to talk about this investigation case, the better. So yeah, there's who's number 4? Here's an interesting one. And feel free to disagree with me, because I think the first 3 that we've got are solid. I am very easy to say the first 3 we've got are like solid 100% picks. I don't think it's hard to disagree with the top 3 picks we've got, because beyond here's where we start having, they've got a motive, but then they've got no means, or they have means but no motive. But I think my 4th pick might indeed be a good one, because I think he's got means. He definitely does have the means, but is the motive there? That's the real question. My 4th suspect on our list definitely has to be Michael Gove, because Gove, almost without a shadow of a doubt, wants to be the leader of the Conservative Party. He wants that position without a shadow of a doubt. Yep, very true. Draconic Drits. As always, Tories not doing the right thing until they are exposed for not doing the very same thing as everyone else, and then conveniently able to afford to drop a very excessive amount of money to make amends. Very true. So it could be Michael Gove, because he's got a motive. He wants to be the PM, and again, taking out at least one of the key front runners, who again Rishi Sunak would not be put beyond anyone who was in there. So that's very possible. And remember, one of the suspects for getting rid of Hancock was Gove. So make no mistake, if Gove was really the one who got rid of Hancock, who released the shall we say the make out behind the door session video, then there is absolutely no doubt in my mind he could be doing it. So Gove is definitely a he's got the means, he's got the motive. So he's definitely suspect number 4. Now number 5, as someone just said there, could be Hancock taking revenge. Now we don't know who released that footage. We still don't know. Now, if Hancock, as we've said before, is having a big re-image boost recently, he's been making and having some big plays, of course, very much in the public eye, doing a lot of like charity work and trying to reaffirm his image, doing a lot of schmoozing among the among the Tory brass. Because again, here is someone who wants to be Prime Minister. But again, his own scandal took him out of the cabinet. Hasn't really been able to have his chance to shine since he's been, out of cabinet. So while there is a motive for, like Gove's was for getting rid of the competition. Oh my God. There we go. Get rid of this. Get over this. We should be fine. Ugh. It's the worst thing when cows come over this track. My God, they just completely destroy it. Oh, nothing but mud. There we go. Oh, nearly. So make no mistake, Hancock has the motive, but did he have the means? And that's where I'm not so sure. But definitely deserves a place on the list. Definitely deserves a place on the list as suspect number 5. And after this, who's next? Well, you may have heard us mention her name before. Penny Mordaunt, one of the MPs currently being, shall we say, focused around by, well, by many of the more moderate Conservatives, who are again absolutely, chomping at the bit to get rid of Boris and bring at least some normality back to the Conservative Party. So might her, or at least one of her cabal, be one of them? So she has motive, again, just like the past, well, really since Liz Truss, take out the Chancellor and then use this as an opportunity to push for, shall we say, a more moderate Tory to take position as the Chancellor. Because Sunak is very, very much a hard right libertarian free market fundamentalist, and the more moderate Tories don't like that. Because the other thing we've got to mention, which is almost certainly ruffling a few feathers this weekend, in the Tory HQ, was that very recently there have been 7 local by-elections. I think they were held Friday night. I believe they were. And if this is true, again, haven't been able to confirm this or not, so take this with a very, very much pinch of salt. But given everything we've been reading recently about how you've seen rural voters abandon the Tories in droves, they're almost certain that these Tories are going to be very worried, especially the moderate Tories, which again gives her more ammunition in this, because they want more, shall we say, more moderate Tories back in the party in key positions of power to at least, shall we say, put the ship back on track. Because that's where the moderate Tories feel. They feel like the party is being hijacked by these right-wing libertarians, again, much of them heavily pushing for really hard forms of Brexit, as we saw Frost publish his piece of nonsense, which we'll have to go over at some point, I guess. But yeah, this is madness. The fact that we could be looking in the local elections a complete potential Tory wipeout in some places, because all those wins went to the Lib Dems. And if the Lib Dems make huge gains at this next local election, the fact that you've got Conservative voters who would normally vote Conservative feel so disheartened. And again, those more moderate Tory voters feeling very disheartened that they don't even want to go out and vote. It's turning off their base. They've lost old people. They've lost farmers and rural areas. So not only does Penny Mordaunt have the means and the motive to at least try and maybe save what they can, maybe before she herself can replace Boris, or at least get someone in charge during this very perilous time. Someone, you know, a more moderate chancellor who would definitely go, well, look, the people do need, you know, help during this time, so I'm going to help them. You know, maybe not, you know, get all the help they need, but at least then people can feel like, well, the Conservatives, they've done something. Sort of a bit like the furlough scheme that Rishi Sunak himself did, of course, during the pandemic. So Penny Mordaunt has the motive and the means, of course. Does she have access to that information? Well, like I say, there are a lot of moderates, a lot of Tory moderates rallying around her to be the next, you know, PM and the successor and their candidate. So it could very well be one of her allies or close allies has leaked that information again to try and knock Sunak out of the running to be PM, or at least leader of the Conservative Party. That is always possible. Yep. Happer Shanks. Yeah. East Ridings of Yorkshire. South Hunsley. Results Lib Dem gained from the Conservatives. Thank you very much, Haggard. Yes. It doesn't look good. These early local by-election results do not look good for the Conservatives. And in May, if Boris takes an absolute thrashing at the local elections, the Tories are going to be in absolute panic mode. Absolute panic mode, because most of the well, at least the moderate Tory coalition, or at least the more moderate Tories, they're the ones who sort of really control the local going power, whereas the more free market libertarians and the really hard writers in the party haven't focused on local stuff. They've more focused on the national stuff, you know, and getting more, you know, extreme right-wing libertarians into the party. That's where they've focused their efforts. So this could be very, very interesting, to say the least. It could be very, very interesting. They lost control of 3, but gained control in 1. Conservatives, that is. Other winners were Greens. Like I say, I fully expect the local elections, certainly the Lib Dems, to come out on top in the May local elections. And I think in many places where they are literally going to be parking their tanks on Conservative lawns, especially down south. Like I say, we've talked about this before. the Tory nightmare. Not only do they lose the Red Wall, which again it looks like they're going to do in the next general election, but also they lose their Southern Wall as well to the Lib Dems. And that is really the Tory nightmare scenario. But anyway, back to our suspect list, because I think five is good. Five is a decent amount of suspect list. So we'll rehash some of the list for you. Of those of you who've joined late and missed our investigatory efforts. So first of first, prime suspect, candidate number one, numero uno, is of course none other than Dominic Cummings. Dominic Cummings both has the means and the motive for doing this. Not only has Cummings said numerous times he wants to destroy the Conservative Party, but also knowing full well that if Boris loses Rishi, this could open other rifts as well. So that could be very, very interesting. Could be very, very interesting if it does turn out to be Cummings. Like I say, prime suspect. He has said he has lots of dirt on other cabinet members. So maybe, of course, seeing all this bad news, he felt it was the perfect time to release that information. So absolutely, numero uno, Dominic Cummings, prime suspect. Number two, of course, Boris Johnson. It's not unusual for Boris Johnson, of course, to do this type of stuff. He's done it before in previous election bids. So, and he, of course, did see the popularity of Sunak, especially during the pandemic, as a threat to his own premiership. So Boris Johnson could, again, very well be trying to get rid of his own chancellor and sees this moment after his awful, awful, should we say, budget, feels as that could be his moment. And of course, remember, Boris has an alibi. Boris is in Ukraine. So suspect number two has to be Boris. Suspect number three, of course, if you know that there's a leadership race coming, prime suspect is get rid of your competition. And this is where the field really opens. So you've got, we'll list them all together because they all really are the same. Liz Truss, ultimately, as we've been saying all this time, prime suspects. If you're going to put money on who's going to be the next PM, Liz and Rishi Sunak were ultimately the two main ones who you would put money on, almost certainly, without a doubt. So perfect timing, getting rid of your competition. After all, Liz herself hasn't had some, should we say, very good press recently. And, well, why not drag your main opposition down into the mud with you as well? And then, of course, it goes on to Michael Gove. Again, someone else who will ultimately be putting their hat in the ring for leader of the Conservative Party, potentially the next PM. Again, Gove learned a lot from Boris. Take out, brief against your opponents. Prime suspect number two. Number three, of course, as been said, Matt Hancock. This could be Matt Hancock's revenge. Someone pointed out, I think in chat, that apparently they said that photo had come from the Treasury. So it could very well be Matt Hancock getting his revenge. And then, of course, Penny Mordaunt. But again, this field just becomes open the second you consider, well, who has the motive to potentially want to become the next PM, or at least the next leader of the Conservative Party. Like I say, the field just goes wide open at that point. So those are my five prime suspects, and I'm sure other people will have others that they would like to put on there as well. However, just a question that I want to ask as well. Gary Croft says here, where do you see seats like Hartlepool and Sunderland going, as those have been turning blue for various reasons? So apparently there's a, if you just read that we'll go back to that question in a moment. Yeah, a quote from Bloomberg, apparently, according to Shanks here, has said that apparently it's a Labour operative they are dubbing Red Throat. Possibly could very be so. Red Throat indeed. Red Throat indeed. So, I just want to answer what Gary said there in that comment, because that's very interesting. Because you have Hartlepool again. These places in Hartlepool and sort of that have again been slowly turning blue. They've been turning blue because they've been promised money by the Conservatives, saying, hey, you've been a Labour voting town. Well, what has Labour ever done for you? Why not just put us in charge? You know, we're in government. You know, put us in charge and we'll give you money. Well, as we've reported several times, that money to places like Hartlepool and those other areas hasn't been very forthcoming. They have not been able to deliver on their monetary promises. So ultimately, I think you're going to see people switch back to Labour, or maybe even switch over to the Lib Dems if the Lib Dems. But then again, if the Lib Dems have again signed the non-aggression pact, and it's very likely, of course, that they are going to obviously engage in that, because a lot of people in the North who voted Tory, their answers have been, well, look, we did what you wanted to do. You said you'd give us the money. You know, you said you'd give us the money. Where's the money? And like I say, those red wall Tory MPs, desperate to try and distance themselves from the rest, of course, of the Conservative Party. You know, the Hartlepool MP who got elected, and as Boris Johnson came up to celebrate her, just a couple of months later, she was decrying Boris Johnson in Parliament after literally, you know, having their arms around each other saying, oh my God, we did it. You know, thank you, Boris. She hasn't delivered for Hartlepool. You know, none of them have delivered on their promises. And those were some big promises that they made. And remember, the other thing that was always said was, oh, we've got the MP, now we'll take the councils. They have not taken a single council from Labour. Not one. So, trust me in this when I say that people in the North, where you've got Wakefield going on with the stuff that's going on there, with their, Conservative MP being caught what he was being up to, there's going to be a by-election in Wakefield in the next couple of months. And voting intention there it's back to Labour. Again, one of the red wall seats. It's now back to Labour from what we can see from initial voting intention. Again, so much for the Conservative efforts to not only win the Red Wall but retain it, and that was always the big question: would be able to retain it? And of course, we're going to find out very quickly in the next few months, especially with Wakefield, that they probably won't be able to take it, or at least retain it. Also, in regards to Hartlepool, there is Ben Houchen, the mayor factor. That's very true. Of course, the Freeport, the Freeport. We haven't talked about that Freeport. My words, that Freeport was owned by the same people who owned P&O. They've now pulled out of that Freeport, so that Freeport being built is now in question. And remember, Ben Houchen's entire political mayoral run was based on that Freeport. There we go. So that is certainly another election possibly up in the air. Oh, I've got you coming over. Oh, biting me. Nibble on me. What are you nibbling for me for? I haven't got anything for you. I know. Keeps on nibbling me. Anyway. Anyway, very interesting times to say the least. Got some more ponies for you. Like I say, hopefully in the next couple of weeks we'll probably start to get to see some more baby ponies come forward. Gary, I'm originally from Hartlepool, live in Wakefield for the last 19 years. Brexit really showed the xenophobia of both these areas and the attitudes of the people. I had known for many years that had come to the surface. Very, very true. You can't deny that. That was obviously a factor that what Brexit did. But the fact that now I think people have seen what those attitudes really give rise to. And of course, as we've said before, you can only blame foreigners so much before the excuse of blaming them really starts to wear thin. I've always said it. The problem for the UK has always been that we've had a conservative government that has gone heavy on the austerity agenda. That was what was causing all the problems really for the UK. Since then, of course, really since the 2008 financial crash. And of course, one thing I would love to see Starmer start doing is he has to start marrying all the problems that we're having around Brexit on the Conservatives, because whereas the Conservatives back in 2008 were saying the financial crash is Labour's fault, it's all Labour's fault, and you're like, well, hold on a second. Oh, hang on. Train going over. Well, hang on a second. Labour had nothing to do with the financial crash of 2008. It happened on their watch, yes, but it's not like they caused it. And of course, the second the Conservatives come in under like the coalition government, Labour got all the blame. It's your fault. And they went heavy on austerity. And that's really the problems, the root cause of almost all the problems the UK has been facing. It has been a Conservative government that has pushed heavily for austerity. That has been the cause. And once people realize that's the case, as we are seeing now, they've been in power for over, what, 14? No, not 13 years almost at this point, over a decade. Britain hasn't gotten better, it's gotten worse. And people are realizing that now, slowly but surely. And even if somehow, some miracle, they manage to win at the next general election, they aren't going to win a majority. They're going to win a very, very slim majority. And that's where, again, they're going to be a really, really lamed up parliamentary session, because all the factional infighting in the Tory party is going to get 10 times worse. 10 times worse. Because if your party sort of, again, shrinks, those factions become more entrenched, they become stronger, some become weaker, some start to have louder voices than others. So it becomes a huge crisis. And as I keep on saying, there is going to be a Tory civil war sooner or later. The groundwork has been set. Boris Johnson can no longer wallpaper over the very cracks that he helped to create in his own party. And when a civil war happens, my word, are we going to see some serious blue on blue action? It's going to be unbelievable. But yeah, we've talked about this before, and we've been saying it's going to happen, but it's just a matter of when it's going to happen. But trust me, it will happen. The seeds have been planted, and sooner or later, the reaper man's going to come and start reaping what many of the Brexiteers indeed sowed during so long ago. So, as always, thank you very much for joining us on today's Good Morning Walk. Hope you've enjoyed it. I don't know who we're going to cover next Wednesday, but it won't be George Galloway. I'll tell you that now. I'm tired of covering Galloway. We've covered him far too much recently. I think we're going to have a look at Andre Walker, yes, because we've been threatening to go back to Andre Walker for quite some time. But the fact that he was on George Galloway's show, and I'm agreeing with what Andre Walker's saying is pretty is pretty amazing. Of course, I didn't agree with everything. Of course, his bizarre comments about the EU and them creating a war in Ireland. Yeah. Oh, well, you can't win them all, as they say sometimes. But as always, thank you very much, one and all, for watching. Like I say, please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button on your way out. And of course, down below there are links to my Patreon page and a one-off link called Buy Me a Coffee, where you can, buy me a coffee. There are also the YouTube memberships open down below as well, where you can subscribe, and you will get some fancy emojis in the to use in the chat on the live stream. So, I believe in. I've completely lost track of time where we are now, but I believe in a bit. I think Max is going to go live for the Good Morning Brunch in about, I think, an hour's time. I think it is. He does have Clarion the Euro carrier on, which will, I think, be very, very good to watch, given the absolute mess we've been seeing down south in and around Kent for the past week, that has only gotten more and more worse as time has gone on. As we always said it would, this has been a disaster in the making for quite some time. So it'd be really interesting to see his take on it, because he is a Euro courier. So it'd be really interesting to see sort of his takes on this and what they've got to say. So go check them out and their action and what they've got to say. But of course, before you do that, like I say, do remember to press the like and share button on your way out. And of course, there we go. always, I know what you come here for the channel for. You come for the ponies. So as always, thank you very much, as always, for joining me on today's Good Morning Walk. We'll see you hopefully again next Saturday, where normal service will be restored. And watch out for more videos coming the week. Like I say, hit the like, share, and subscribe button if you're new to the channel. Do all the fun stuff. Links down below to Patreon, buy me a coffee. You know all the drill by now. As always, have an absolutely, I hope you've had a fantastic week. Have a fantastic week ahead, and we'll see you all next time for another Good Morning Walk.